This is What I Was Thinking at the Time, Episode 2, My First Job. This is a recollection on how I got hired on my first job. Now, I'm not counting a job that included washing udders, shoveling manure, silage and grain, or even throwing bales of hay. Nope, this was a job working for people I had never met before. I had graduated from trail in June, was having a usual summer doing the things listed above. One day the phone rang. The call changed my life. I answered the phone. I think it was Mr. Thjnking. It's been 53 years, so I'm not totally sure. It could have been Jay. Anyway, I was told they were looking for a male secretary, and the folks at Trail recommended me, as I was the only male to ever take a full curriculum of commercial classes. They wanted me to come over to the school the next morning for an interview. The school was TSI. That stood for Technical Services Institute, a heavy equipment school. My interview was at 9 a.m. I was up early, got cleaned and spiffied up. I think I wore my blue suit with tie and highly shined shoes, of course. The school was and still is located along I-81, in the area of the rest stop north of exit 201. It has been a cane truck driving school for at least the last 20 years. I drove over the hill to Worth Church and then took the dirt road that led out to the school. I arrived a few minutes early and entered the lobby. I knocked on the door. Someone said, "Come in." As I entered, I noticed nice new white and orange desks. Each had a phone and only one had a typewriter. It was a new powder blue Olympia. I introduced myself, and Mr. Thjnking, an older man, told me to have a seat. I sat at the desk with the typewriter. I was asked questions about my ability to make payroll, withhold personal income tax, etc. Also, could I create stencils and run a mimeograph machine? Yes, I could do all that. Next came the typing test. I told him I wasn't super fast, but I could do this at 40 words or so per minute. Mr. Thjnking gave me a 2-paragraph letter to copy. I was so nervous, I'm glad I found the home keys. I made one mistake. I knew it as soon as I did it, but I kept going. The mistake was that I forgot to hit the tab to indent the first word of the second paragraph. Other than that, it was perfect. I acknowledged the mistake as I removed the paper from the typewriter. Another man came out of the adjoining room. That was his office. It was Jay Sassal, the school administrator. I guess he had been listening to my interview and went over to Mr. Thjnking. He looked over my typing. One of them gave me a slip of paper that said, Pennsylvania Heavy and Highway Contractors Bargaining Association. When the phone rings, answer it as a representative of the association. The phone rang, so holding that piece of paper, I picked up the receiver and said, "Good morning, this is the Pennsylvania Heavy and Highway Contractors Bargaining Association. My name is Don. How may I help you?" The voice on the other end came back with, "Are you the new secretary?" I replied that I wasn't exactly sure. "Who would you like to speak to?" He replied, "Jay." I asked, "Who's calling, please?" He said, "George." I handed the phone to Jay and told him George was on the phone. After the phone call, Jay asked if I thought I could handle the job. I told him I could do everything you asked. I just have to put it into real-world practice. "Okay, you have the job." I asked, "When do I start?" Jay said, "You already have." I asked if I could call home, as my mother was more nervous than me. I said, "Okay." I called Mom and told her the good news and that she wouldn't see me till later. Now I had to meet people and learn their positions at the school and in the association. It turned out George was the director of the association. He and Mr. Thjnking would be in the field most of the time getting jobs for the school trainees. This was a federal government training program designed to train hardcore unemployed, mainly from Philly, Harrisburg, and Pittsburgh. The Pennsylvania Heavy and Highway Contractors Bargaining Association was made up of 60-member District 50 United Mine Workers Union contractors. These companies agreed to take graduating students of the school into an apprenticeship program to work towards journeyman level in the union. All 60 of these companies work nationwide, mainly constructing the interstate highway system. I'll bet you didn't know that the interstates were built for 80-mile-per-hour normal traffic speeds. We got copies of all the road jobs put out for bids. That's how I know. There was another male secretary who worked for Jay. His name was Bryce. He was from Hot Bottom. He was a bit of a goof. He quit after a few months and went to a new paper plant in Mahoopany called Charmin Paper Products. It was closer for him. I didn't miss him much. Always messing around. I had a lot to do, and he was always bugging me. When he left, I got his work too. My pay was $100 per week, salaried, 2 weeks vacation and health care. I was hired at 17 and had to wait a month to sign up for health care. I had to be 18. Mr. Thjnking was a retired representative of the union. He was great with people. I learned a lot. I was good because I ended up being mother hen to each of the 212 students that eventually trained there. My duties went something like this, in no particular order. I interacted almost daily with the Bureau of Employment Security, Federal Department of Labor, Pennsylvania Department of Labor, Pennsylvania Department of Education, garnered trainee information from either presidents of the contractor companies or their general superintendents on place trainees' hours worked, and updated their apprenticeship papers. I did payroll, taxes, paid bills, made quarterly national bank deposits. My other duties included creating a budget forecast that accompanied a quarterly request for continued funding from Congress. This was a federal program. I was in charge of a $1.3 million budget. Paperwork-wise, I had to type a weekly update report for all the 60 members and above-listed agencies on stencils and run off copies on the mimeograph machine. The copies had to be folded and put in envelopes on which the addresses were typed. There was no email in 1967-68. The envelopes and stamps had to be wet sealed, and I put them in a big mailbox. I had fallen behind with checkbook balancing, etc., and I really didn't have a running ledger either. That was really bothering me, so I spent one entire day and night hand-creating a ledger of accounts. It was a long night, but a good thing I did it. The next workday, a car with 2 guys I hadn't seen before pulled in. I greeted them in the lobby. They showed me their ID. They were Treasury agents. They were there to inspect my books. They spent 3 days going through my checkbook and ledger and found no errors. Whew! Good thing I made the ledger up the day and night before. George was the director, at least by title, but Jay was the main guy. It seems George was working on 2 projects at the same time. He was doing something for the railroad. I'm not sure what, but I found myself with expense reports for railroad work. That stuff wasn't covered under my project. I showed the paperwork to Jay. When George came in, he and Jay had a closed-door discussion. George was gone the next week, and we got a new director. One interaction with the Treasury Department was plenty. In my spare time, I would sit in a class here and there. That's where I learned about benchmarks and Philadelphia rods and transits. Also how to establish the height of the instrument and the plus or minus elevation at distance. Compaction capabilities of various types of soil was interesting as well. Once each class, the training director, Bill Hameza, would have me come out and grease the Cat 12 grader in white shirt and tie to make the point that lubrication does not have to be messy. There were guys there from the inner city. I had a couple guys point out the window and ask, "What is that?" I asked them, "Where do you get your milk?" They said, "The store." I then asked, "Do you know where the store gets it?" They had no clue. Never thought about it. You should have seen the expressions when I explained what a cow was and its relationship to the store. I also had to point out that the other one across the road was a bull. Leave him alone. He'll kill you. The job lasted 18 months. I was then tasked in getting everything ready for the Harrisburg office. A new secretary was hired to work for Jay. One more class was to come through. As I had accomplished all my tasks, I requested to be part of the last class. I got in. Since I had already run all the equipment in my spare time and on weekends, like building the Fleetville Airport, I had an easy time. I was even coaching some guys who didn't understand how you bring something to grade. I had to explain on a chalkboard about knocking off the high spots and filling in the low ones. It was one heck of a first job. I was typing about 10 hours a day. On Friday evening, I became the janitor. I had to strip and wax the office floor. $100 a week was good money back then, but I think they got their money's worth. I guess episode 3 may as well be about our employee 4th of July outing and maybe the Christmas party. To be continued. Mr. Thjnking was in his 70s when I worked with him. And Jay passed away a few years back here. I always wanted to stop in and thank him for giving me that job. I never got to it. I learned so much in that job, it was unbelievable. Stuff I was able to use all the rest of my life. Well, stay tuned. I guess maybe the Christmas party's next. All the best, folks. All the best.